This is The Cold War and the Middle East by Anthony Bowen, Marcus Gillian, Grafton Brown, and Pierre Williams.
The Cold War was basically between two opposing sides, the United States of America and the Soviet Union.
Supporting sides, the United States partnered with Israel, and the Russians have partnered with Italy, Middle East. I'm sorry.
The Biltmore Conference. The Biltmore Conference was held in New York in the year of 1942. And it was basically, the topic in question was, should the Israelis have a new established Jewish state? If they want a new state, it would have to be a democracy on their terms. The Biltmore program was introduced, and the effect that it had on these Israelis was, it was like an increased dislike for Great Britain because of their involvement with their conflict with the Arabic people. And it was the cause of creating a Jewish state, which turned into a moral issue. And it was, however, it was denied by Great Britain, and then it was brought to the attention of the United States as well as the United Nations. The Soviet Union. That's it.
Okay, the Aswan Dam. The Aswan Dam was basically the United States, together with Great Britain, was going to provide nearly $70 million in aid to Egypt to help with the dam. The United States withdrew the offer of the financial aid to Egypt. United States Secretary of State Dulles was the man that called the aid of Egypt off. Dulles had agreed to the assistance reluctantly. Dulles had a deep suspicion of the Egyptian leader, Gamal Abdel Nasser. He believed he was reckless and dangerous. America's aid might have made Nasser back from relations with the Soviet Union and prevent the growth of the Soviet power in the Middle East, which would have caused instability within the Middle East between the countries. Though without the aid, the dam project would fold, he was wrong. The Soviets rushed to the Egyptians' aid and provided with the dam years later.
The Suez Crisis. The Suez Crisis occurred directly after the Aswan Dam was built. You can say the Aswan Dam had a little bit of a role to play in like how the Suez Crisis occurred. The Suez Canal, of course, is property of Egypt. However, it was made by a Frenchman named Ferdinand de Lesseps in 1869. And so it's not directly property of Egypt. So when it comes to the Suez Canal, there was too much of a British military presence within Egypt at the time during the entire crisis. And so what Nasser wanted to do was to tell the British people to back off, but they wouldn't. So in response to this, and also during that time, the Russians funded them. Well, at the Aswan Dam, the Russians funded the Aswan Dam and also gave them weapons as well. So they had a little bit of influence as well. And so due to that, Nasser decided to secure the Suez Canal, and for the sake of nationalism of the people, which angered Great Britain. Great Britain, they allied themselves with the French and these Israelis in order to take back the canal, which they did. The Israelis, of course, they weren't too hard to persuade because they've been in conflict with the Arabs. And so because they took back the canal, Russia, Khrushchev, their leader, he decided to threaten the Tripartite Alliance with nuclear attacks, and the United States told him to back off of it. And so the United States, with their influence of the canal. They pressured their allies, the British and the French, and a little bit later, they also got to the Israelis as well. And so in the end, Nasser was able to keep his canal, and the forces were to back off. Relationships, they were a bit broken in the end. That's it.
Finish.
Good job.